Here comes Speed Racer. He's a demon on wheels. He's a demon and he's gonna be chasing after someone. Go Speed Racer, go Speed Racer, go Speed Racer, go! All right, today, guys, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite films of all time, Speed Racer from 2008. I just got to make sure I've got everything I need in order to talk about Speed Racer. I got my big Mach 5, got my little miniature Mach 5 right here. We got my Speed Racer Funko Pop. All right, we got that right here. We got a Blu-ray, which I sleep under my pillow every single night. I think we have everything we need to talk about Speed Racer. I'll be the one who says it right now. I think Speed Racer is the best film that came out in 2008. Yes, that includes a year that had such tremendous visual candy as Iron Man and The Dark Knight. I think Speed Racer bests them all. It's one of my top 10 favorite films of all time. And today we're going to talk about why I love that film. Give you some of the reasons why I think it's definitely worth visiting for the first time or revisiting if you haven't actually taken the time to watch it. I just think I'm ready to have this conversation. I think I'm emotionally ready for it. So, for those of you that hadn't seen the film, it is directed by Lana and Lily Wachowski, who, of course, made the important sci-fi classic The Matrix. They also did Cloud Atlas, which we talked about previously on the Why I Love Cinema series. Stars Emile Hirsch as Speed, member of the Racer family. Pretty great name if you're going to be a race car driver. Speed, his girlfriend Trixie, his mom, his dad, and his younger brother and pet monkey Chim Chim. Basically, the film, I guess, is Speed's trying to come to terms with corruption in the very thing that he loves. There's a lot going on. I would describe this film in a lot of ways as an epic because it does have a very, like, each of the single acts of this 3-act film could have been its own film in a lot of ways, but it's jammed in. There's a lot going on in 2 hours and 15 minutes. But basically, he gets an offer to join up with Royalton Racers, and then learn some hard truths about the racing industry, and realizes he's probably better off by himself. But in doing so, he spurns a very powerful man in the racing world, and has to compete in one of the most dangerous races in the entire world, one where people can die any day. In order to basically clear his family's name and take down the villains. His interactions with the disturbingly strange Racer X, played by Matthew Fox from, of course, We Are Marshall and TV's Lost, are pretty darn cool. And I think there's a lot of characters in this film. There's a lot of stuff going on, but we're gonna break down, I guess, why I really love the movie right now. So real quick, why did I pick this film? Of course, other than loving it, what felt like this film didn't get the kind of love that it deserved? Well, the film was actually nominated for a Razzie for worst prequel, remake, ripoff, or sequel. It lost to Indiana Jones 4, which I feel like if we're gonna say any film is a worst prequel, remake, ripoff, or sequel, I do think Indiana Jones is maybe more deserving of it than a lot of other films. I don't think this film should have been nominated for a Razzie. I don't think it's a ripoff or remake, or kind of, it doesn't really fit those terms, and I also don't think it's worthy of the worst title. The film had a $120 million budget, and it made $93.9 million at the box office, which, when you take into account, again, like we talked about before, the theater taking a good chunk of that plus marketing, this film lost. I mean, it could have lost somewhere close to $80 to $100 million overall. It also has a 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, which means that every 5 critics I went to see it, only 2 enjoyed it. So, kind of less than half. And I can see in some ways, like, people not loving it the way I do. But I don't understand people flat out disliking it. I think this is the kind of film what you're getting into when you go see it. I think the trailers were very, very on point. So we're going to talk a little bit about why I think that's crazy that it's got such a low reception in the field, even now 12 years later. So, real quick, I went to see the movie. I think it's probably the most I've seen a movie in theaters in my entire life. I just kept going back every time. We used to drive an hour to go to the big theater, and we would do double features. And it always seemed like Speed Racer was the second feature every single time we went back for probably a month or two. And I just, I couldn't not watch it. When the film came out, I drove to pick up the Blu-ray at midnight, the Monday night of it coming out, because I knew it was technically Tuesday then, and I could go to the 24-hour store and pick it up. And yeah, I had it in my player for over and over again. I watched the DVD, upgraded the Blu-ray. I've watched this thing in 3D, which is fantastic. So let's get into the 5 reasons why I love Speed Racer, or the 5 of the many reasons. Number 1, I think it is the best representation of a live-action anime. This film has been described as like visual candy, really sugary because it's just an onslaught of colors. And I think that's one of the best representations you can give of it. But I also feel like we've looked at other like animes or translations from a Japanese source, and I just think this one right here is the best version of it because it's a living live action anime. These are real characters. Yes, they were shot on a soundstage, but this is probably the closest you can get to having a cartoon realistically portrayed without losing the magic of what made it special. I think Speed Racer is very much to anime as Sin City was to graphic novels. Like, it was like someone just, took the frames out and put real people in and smacked them back up. If you've watched the original show, I think it was in the 60s, it's definitely that's definitely an 2D kind of, it felt cheaply produced show, and I think this one here just again like elevated the material with its depiction of the world. And I think just some of the things that we get to see in there, some of the embracement that we get to see of making a live action cartoon works really well. And it's strange to say that these people made The Matrix and then they went on to do Speed Racer, because the two films, for their visually stunningness, they're very different. They're very different representations. A little bit less narcissistic or pessimistic version would be a Speed Racer. But I just think, it's like watching a cartoon come to life, and that's something that's I don't think's been done since. I don't think it's ever been done better than it has right here. So I do think the best representation of a live action anime is Speed Racer. Reason number 2, the fully realized world, and I think this is something that people kind of knock the film for, but this is being a live action cartoon. This is. The world is so developed in the different races, and then you have your racing league, but then you also have your cross country races, and the way in which the car mechanics are defined, is unrealistic as can be. I've often said I'm a person who really enjoys racing movies, but I really don't know anything about race cars or cars in general. But this is for me epitomizes what the sense of a racing film can be. It is that journey from point A to point B that changes you as a character as it changes the track that you're on. And I think the fully realized world is something that's tough to come by, because you are doing a cartoon. You are doing something that's animated, but it's live action. And I think having your fully realized world of the different racers, there's probably 2 different racers in this film that each don't get a lot of time. They're very, kind of stockish at times because it's how they influence the main characters that really matter. But there's such a colorful cast of unique racers that each have their own unique vehicle with unique specialties. I think especially the Casa Cristo, where people kind of break the rules and they don't race the way they're supposed to, is really cool. And I think, things like the jump drive on the vehicles, being able to leap over other vehicles because you've got these hammers on the bottom that propel your vehicle into the air, is again one of those elements that makes makes the candy really palatable, because it's again it's developed. Everything in this film is developed out as nicely as it can be. The only time it even kind of breaks into our version of the world is when there's that moment where they're playing Freebird, when Spritle and Chim Chim are hopped up on candy. But other than that, it doesn't feel like it's ever been our world. It feels like it's a viewpoint into something that's completely unique, completely different. And we in science fiction look at that and we say, wow, that's tremendous that they've gone down to every single detail. And in fantasy, we do to an extent, but not this kind of fantasy. We don't celebrate the fully realized world the way that we should. And I think this is a film that really builds a world. So that's number 2. Reason number 3, the cast completely understands the movie that they are in. Yes, there are elements of Speed Racer that are cheesy, and I think that's intentionally done. But you also get, Susan Sarandon, who's a tremendous actress, but she knows exactly when she needs to hit the heart and when she needs to hit the fun. There's a moment where she's sitting on the bed next to Speed, and she's talking about how when she watches him race, it just takes her breath away. That's an emotional beat, and I think it's a really powerful emotional beat, too. And we'll get to why that is a little bit further on down, too. But then you also have, moments where she's joyful, she's gleeful, she's having fun, she's being involved with this. Looking at John Goodman's Pops, this is a really tough character to nail because Pops' character is written in the film to be a fun father, a loving father, but also a stern father who's made mistakes. And I think seeing some of the mistakes that Pops Racer has made throughout the course of his past coming back to haunt him in this film is a really strong thing to do. But then you get fun moments too, like him fighting ninjas. So I think the cast really nailed exactly what kind of movie that they're in. And I think this is a tougher film to nail because you can't go full cheese and you can't go full serious. You need to be self-aware. And I think that's something that the cast does a really great job of right here. All right, so that's reason number 3. The cast completely understands the film that they are in. Reason number 4, we've kind of touched on it already, but the visuals. I think especially we get 3 major races in this film. Kind of a fourth, there's kind of a fourth race at one point that bleeds into the narrative a little bit. But we get 3 major races in the film, and each one of them is unique and different and powerful and just so beautifully made. Specifically the Casa Cristo, because it has some great set pieces in it, and it's a long form race. It kind of reminded me of Le Mans from Ford v Ferrari, which just came out, which is a long race done in a long succession, and anyone can take over at any point. But this version of it too is again video game like almost, because everybody has their different things. There's a vehicle that's got maces on it, and it's just swinging them around. There is a vehicle that's got a weapon on its wheel, and it's trying to pop the tires of Speed as he's going by. I think the visual palette for it is so much fun to watch and unfold. But then you've got the dozens of effects artists companies that worked on this. So there are a lot of different companies. I know ILM did a little bit of it as well. Specifically, there's a scene on a semi, basically, as Teijo Togo-kan, who eventually becomes Speed Racer's partner in the film, is basically being held by thugs, and they're trying to just beat the heck out of him to teach him a lesson, to teach him not to mess with them. And Racer X comes in and helps take down the semi and rescue Teijo, and the whole sequence is gorgeous from the way that they dealt with it outside, because there's some moments when they go realistic, some moments when they go really animated style, and I think the color schemes really run well together. It's an excellent visual set piece that would get forgotten because of all the other visual set pieces in the film. I can see the visual palette not working for everybody, but I feel like it should at least be presentable, and that's what it is. So that's number 4. The visuals, need I say more? If you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. The visuals are stunning. Reason number 5, and this is the most important reason why Speed Racer is one of my favorite films of all time. This is the reason why I feel like I can praise this film for the rest of my life, and I can introduce it to, my eventual kids. I can introduce it to, young people as a teaching moment, because at its core, it's a family film. But number 5 reason, racing as a placeholder for what drives each of us. This is an area where, all of these elements we've talked about really help, because the film is accessible to younger audiences. It's accessible to children, and I feel like it's accessible to adults as well. But then having your fully realized world, having your cast that understands that, the material can be cheesy at times and heartfelt at times, and those visuals all culminate with racing as a placeholder for what drives each of us. And what I mean by that is the way Speed Racer talks about racing, talks about being behind the wheels of a T180, driving the Mach 5, is the way each of us should describe the way that we're passionate about what we do. I'm a writer at heart. I love writing. I love being a part of that storytelling aspect. And he says, like, he's posited this question by Pops. You think you're going to get behind the wheel of a car and change the world? And he goes, no, but it's the only thing I know how to do, and I've got to do something. And I think anybody who's passionate about something that they love understands that argument. It's the only thing I know how to do, and I've got to do something. There have been times in my life when I have been broken, when I have struggled, and I turn to the written page because I'm passionate about it. Another one of my passions is film. I turn to film because I'm passionate about it. It's the only thing I know how to do in that moment, and I got to do something. That's a powerful piece there. There's also an element when Racer X says, goes up to speed and says, you don't get behind the wheel of a T180 to be a driver. You do it because you're driven. And again, that element really works for the things that we're passionate about. I don't know why I love the things that I love, but I do love them, and I'm driven to be a part of them. I'm driven to work on them. And I think for artists, but just for anybody, if you love farming, if you love collecting baseball cards, if you love gardening or going on walks, and you cannot even begin to understand like why anyone wouldn't love this thing that you love, that's the passion that drives each of us. And racing is a placeholder for that in the film. There's so many amazing lines of dialogue, which again could be cheesy to some people, but if you look at it in terms of how these lines affect speed and what drives him, his racing is that. He says at one point that racing is like a religion, and I agree that that is what he does. He prays to the racing every single day. He's blessed that he has a family, a core unit that all cares about racing the same way that he does. He's found his family, and some of them are people that he's actually related to. Some is girlfriend Trixie, like the other people in his life that care about him the same way. Racer X and Inspector Detector, like people that care about what he cares about and care about their own things as well, and are passionate. It's what drives each of them. So that's why it's number 5. Racing is a placeholder for what drives each of us. All right, guys. Those are my 5 reasons. Again, the best representation of a live-action anime, the fully realized world, the cast completely understanding the film that they're in, the visuals, and of course, number 5, racing is a placeholder for what drives each of us. Those are my 5 reasons for loving Speed Racer, and you're crazy if you don't believe me. All right, let's do a minute of fun facts here. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, let's go. So, the film languished in development hell from 1992 until the Wachowskis finally boarded the project and turned it into what we see today. Now, fun fact number 2, young Trixie, earlier in a flashback scene in the film, is played by young Ariel Winter, who at the time hadn't become as famous, but she's become much more famous for working on Modern Family now. She's been in the limelight the entire time. Next thing, one of the announcers of the opening race is Peter Fernandez, who you may not know, but he voiced Speed Racer and Rex in the original 1967 English dub of the cartoon. Fernandez sadly passed away in 2010. Next thing, Roger Allam, who plays Royalton, also appeared in the first season of Game of Thrones as Illyrio Mopatis, a character who would pop up throughout the novels several more times. Strangely, he does not appear in the show after season 1. Next thing, Art LaFleur also appears in the film as an announcer. You may not know Art LaFleur, but you definitely have seen him before. He's most famous for being in The Sandlot as who? The Great Bambino! After winning a race in the film at one point, Speed jumps out of his car and poses. This is an exact recreation of the opening credits pose in the cartoon. And last thing, at one point, J.J. Abrams wrote a version of the screenplay. There would likely have been more lens flares in this version. We're done. Thank you for letting me get that out of my system. Now I want to hear from you guys. If you're at all interested, check out the link below. Join our Patreon for Kyle and Nick on Film. It's patreon.com/Kyle Nick on Film. You can find all the different tiers where you can help influence some of the stuff that we're going to be doing on Kyle and Nick on Film. The show's coming back. We finally have, set aside some time where we're going to be able to film some new episodes to get to you as soon as possible. So go ahead and join us for that. If you can't join the Patreon, I totally get it. Drop us a like. It's so simple. It takes you 2 seconds. And believe me, you'll feel better too. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on Speed Racer. Do you hate the film? Am I completely crazy? I get it. Let me know. I want to hear it. But if you also haven't had a chance to see the film, go see it. Then bring your thoughts to the comments because I want to hear from everybody on this one. If you haven't had a chance, click that subscribe button too, and then you'll get new content every single week on the Kyle and Nick on Film channel. It's just that simple. And if you want, you can even help bring us out by sharing the video. You got social media, why don't you use it? Share the video on your different social media platforms and get the conversation going amongst yourselves as well too. We really do appreciate that. That's it for me, guys. You can find all my film reviews on goatfilmreviews.com. You can find new episodes here on Kyle and Nick on Film's YouTube channel every single week. You can follow me at Almighty Goatman on Twitter, on Instagram. You can follow us at KN on Film on Twitter as well for more content. And you can find me all over the Twitterscape and the Filmscape and all around and doing my things. It's been tremendously fun talking with you guys today, and we'll see you next time.